Rain slammed against the metal rooftops of the abandoned marketplace. Midnight. Empty. Dangerous. And that's when a small girl, barefoot, shivering, eyes red from crying, ran straight into the chest of a man who ruled the shadows of the entire city. A man feared by everyone. A man no one dared to look in the eye. The Korean Mafia king himself, Sang Hyun-tae, known on the streets simply as Sang T. She grabbed his coat with trembling hands. "Please, sir. My stepfather is selling me tonight. Please save me." Sang T froze. He had killed men for less than touching his clothes. But this wasn't a crime. This was a nightmare. And it wasn't supposed to reach him. Endless Love Stories presents an Afro-Korean Mafia love story. If you're new here, subscribe. There's more where this came from. Sang T stared down at the little girl, his jaw tightening. She was no older than 10. Her tiny fingers clung to him like he was the last safe place in the world. Behind her, footsteps approached. Heavy, clumsy, drunk. Her stepfather. Sang T's men, dressed in black tactical coats, stepped forward instantly. 4 of them, guns ready beneath their jackets. The marketplace lights flickered, throwing long shadows across the wet concrete. "Boss, what do we do?" whispered Min-jae, Sang T's right hand. The stepfather stumbled into view. Eyes red, shirt half-buttoned, belt in his hand. "There you are, you useless little rat," he snarled. "Come here before I—" He stopped the moment he noticed Sang T. His face drained of color. Everyone in the city knew that face. Everyone. "B-boss Sang T," he stuttered. "Oh, I didn't know she ran into—" "You were chasing her," Sang T said softly. Too softly. The kind of softness that made even his men nervous. The girl hid behind him. "She's my daughter, sir. Just discipline. You know how kids are." Sang T tilted his head. "Kids run from monsters," he said. "Not fathers." The stepfather swallowed hard. "It's just a misunderstanding." "No," Sang T whispered. "The misunderstanding is you thinking you can breathe in front of me." A single nod. Min-jae's fist struck the man like a hammer. He dropped instantly, groaning on the wet floor. The girl flinched, but Sang T knelt to her level. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "S.H. Shannon," she whispered. "Shannon," he repeated. "Why did you think I could help?" Her answer changed everything. "Because—" Her voice cracked. "My mom always said, when people are evil, they fear someone even worse. She said Korean Mafia don't let children suffer." Sang T's breath stopped for half a second. She didn't know who he truly was. Not the criminal. Not the killer. Not the king. She only saw him as hope. That was more dangerous than any gun. "Boss," Min-jae said quietly. "What's the call?" A long pause. Sang T lifted Shannon into his arms. "Take the girl's stepfather," he said coldly. "Tonight, he answers to me." The black SUVs tore through the sleeping city, engines humming like hungry beasts. Shannon sat in the back seat beside Sang T, wrapped in his coat, even though it nearly swallowed her whole. She kept glancing at him nervously. "Are you going to hurt him?" she whispered. "Do you want me to?" Sang T asked. Shannon stared out the window. "He hurts my mom too," she whispered. "And he said if she talks, he'll make her disappear. And he said I belong to him now. To sell." Sang T looked at her, really looked. This wasn't a case. This wasn't business. This was a wound carved into a child's soul. "You're safe now," he said, surprising even himself with how gentle his voice sounded. Shannon's eyes filled again. "People always say that, but they don't stay." Sang T said nothing, but he made a silent promise. The car rolled to a stop in Sang T's private dockyard. Neon lights glowing against the water, crates stacked like towers, guards everywhere. Shannon's mouth fell open. "You live here?" "No," Sang T said. "I rule here." She blinked. "You're a king?" Min-jae coughed in the front seat. Sang T didn't answer. Instead, he carried her out of the car as if she weighed nothing. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "To the truth." Inside the warehouse, Shannon saw her stepfather tied to a chair, still conscious, still terrified. The moment he saw Sang T carrying the girl, he panicked. "Please, she's lying." "She lies. Kids lie all the time." Sang T set Shannon down gently. "Stay behind me," he said. Then he walked toward the stepfather. Each step was slow, heavy, full of controlled violence. "Who told you to sell her?" Sang T asked. "No one. No one," the man cried. It was just business." Sang Ti's eyes turned ice cold. You sell drugs, weapons, stolen goods. But children? He leaned in. That is a crime punishable by death. The man trembled. Please, please, I have a family. You had, Sang Ti said. The stepfather screamed. Shannon covered her ears. But Sang Ti turned and knelt beside her again. You won't hear anything bad, he said softly. Not tonight. Then what will happen to him? She whispered. Sang Ti looked straight into her eyes. Justice. Later, as Sang Ti and his men planned next steps, Shannon tugged at his sleeve. Sir, can I ask a favor? Sang Ti nodded. Can you help my mom? Her voice broke. He said he'd kill her if she talked. And she doesn't know I escaped. Sang Ti stood slowly. His expression became something dangerous. Something that made every man in the room straighten up. Min Jae, he said. Get the team. We move now. But boss, this is personal, not business. Sang Ti's reply sent chills through the room. It became business the moment a child asked me for help. The warehouse burst into controlled motion the moment Sang Ti gave the order. Men moved like shadows, loading weapons, checking communication lines, pulling black tactical coats over armored shirts. Shannon stood quietly beside him, clutching the sleeves of his oversized coat around her small hands. She kept her eyes on him like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept breaking beneath her feet. Sang Ti knelt to her level again. Where is your mother? Shannon hesitated. Home. He locked her in the room. He said he'd beat her if she came out. And he said once he finished selling me, she'd be next. The muscles in Sang Ti's jaw flexed in a way that made Min Jae look away. When Sang Ti got quiet like that, something terrible always happened. He stood in one smooth motion. Everyone in the cars. The convoy of black SUVs cut through the night like a swarm of predators. Inside, Shannon pressed her face against the window, hands trembling. Sang Ti watched her silently, noticing every flinch, every time her breath broke. Every second, she looked like a child trying not to cry. You're not going back alone, he said. Shannon whispered. Nobody ever comes back for us. Sang Ti didn't realize he had reached for her hand until their fingers touched. She relaxed instantly, leaning against him, as though her small body had finally found a place that didn't hurt. Outside, streetlights bled into long streaks of white as they approached the rundown neighborhood. Distant shouting echoed from the block. Sang Ti placed a hand on Shannon's shoulder. You stay behind me the entire time. Understand? She nodded. The SUVs stopped. Sang Ti stepped out first, his men forming a wall around him. Shannon followed, staying close, eyes darting nervously in the darkness. The house stood crooked, lights flickering, the front door slightly open like it had already given up. Sang Ti entered without hesitation. Shannon whispered, Mom? No answer. Sang Ti gestured, and two of his men spread out through the house. Another checked the hallway. Then a sound, a muffled cough, a weak voice calling for help. Shannon jolted. That's her. Sang Ti threw open the bedroom door. Shannon's mother lay on the floor, wrists bruised where she'd been tied, face swollen from a beating. When she saw her daughter, she sobbed uncontrollably and reached out. Baby, Shannon, oh my God, I thought. Shannon flew into her arms. They clung to each other, shaking. Sang Ti stepped back, giving them room. The mother looked up at him with fear and confusion. Who are you? How did you find her? Before Shannon could answer, footsteps thundered behind them. The hallway exploded with movement. A man in a black hoodie charged toward the bedroom with a knife raised. One of Sang Ti's men grabbed him, but the attacker was fast, desperate, lunging straight past him toward Shannon and her mother. Shannon screamed. Sang Ti moved before anyone else could blink. His hand shot forward, grabbing the attacker's wrist mid-strike. With a short, precise twist, the knife clattered to the floor. The man fell to his knees, groaning in agony, unable to move his arm. The room fell silent. Shannon stared at Sang Ti like he wasn't human, but something more dangerous, more powerful. Boss, Min Jae said breathlessly, he's not working alone. There are more upstairs. Shannon's mother clutched her daughter tighter. They came earlier, she whispered. Men looking for her stepfather. They said he owed them money. They said they'd take Shannon if he couldn't pay. Sang Ti's eyes sharpened. This wasn't random. This wasn't just a sick man trying to sell his stepdaughter. Someone else was involved. Get them both outside, Sang Ti ordered. Guard them. While Shannon and her mother were escorted out, Sang Ti and his men stormed the rest of the house. Two more attackers waited upstairs, one with a bat, one with a pistol. The fight was brutal and fast, the kind of violence every Mafia man was trained to handle. But Sang Ti himself barely lifted a hand. His men ended it within seconds. When Sang Ti stepped outside, Shannon ran to him instantly. Is Mom safe now? She asked. For tonight, he said. She swallowed. And is he gone? The bad man. Her stepfather. Sang Ti didn't lie to children. He won't hurt you again. Shannon pressed her face into his coat and sobbed. It was the first time she allowed herself to break. Her mother reached for her, but the girl stayed clinging to Sang Ti, fingers gripping him like he was the anchor in a storm she'd been drowning in for years. Her mother whispered, Sir, I don't know who you are, but thank you. Sang Ti looked at her closely. Something about her face stirred a memory he didn't know he had. The shape of her eyes, the tone of her voice, something faint, distant, almost forgotten. Have we met before? He asked quietly. She stiffened. No, I've never met anyone like you. But the hesitation, just for a second, was enough to make Sang Ti's instincts flare. Before he could question it, Minjae approached, face tense. Boss, there's something you need to hear. Sang Ti followed him aside, leaving Shannon and her mother under guard. Minjae lowered his voice. The attackers upstairs had Korean tattoos, boss. Sang Ti's expression changed. His voice dropped into something cold enough to freeze blood. Which crew? Minjae swallowed. One of the splinter groups from Busan. The ones who went rogue after your father died. Sang Ti went still. Rogue Korean Mafia men, operating in his city, targeting a child. It wasn't coincidence. It was a message. Minjae added. Boss, they weren't after the stepfather. They were after the girl. Sang Ti's eyes narrowed dangerously. Why? We don't know. But he hesitated. One of them said something before he died. Something about the girl's mother. Sang Ti turned sharply. What about her? He said. You still owe us. You know what we want. Sang Ti's heartbeat slowed to a cold, calculating rhythm. His gaze drifted to the woman holding her daughter close, shaking with fear. She wasn't just a victim. She was connected. And to something dangerous. Bring them both, he said quietly. We're not done. The ride back to the warehouse felt different this time. The night outside passed like a blur, but inside the SUV, the air was tense and heavy. Shannon slept curled against Sang Ti's side, exhaustion finally pulling her under. Her mother, seated across from them, kept her hands folded tightly on her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. Every few seconds, she glanced at Shannon, then at Sang Ti, then away again like something was eating her from the inside. Sang Ti didn't miss any of it. He waited until they arrived and the men opened the doors. Only then did he speak, voice low. We need to talk. Shannon's mother nodded slowly. Inside, the warehouse lights were dimmer than usual, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The geometry men kept a respectful distance, creating a bubble of privacy around Sang Ti and the two females. Shannon was still asleep, so Sang Ti carried her gently to a couch tucked against the wall. She didn't stir, not even when he pulled off his coat and draped it over her small body. Her mother watched him do it, something unreadable in her eyes. Sang Ti faced her. What's your name? Linda, she answered quietly. Linda Johnson. Where were you born? She blinked. What does that? Answer. A beat. Busan. Minjae froze halfway across the room. Sang Ti stepped closer. Who are you to the splinter group in Busan? And why would they want your daughter? She flinched at the sharpness in his tone. Her hands trembled. I don't know what they want from Shannon. I swear on my life. But you know why they want you. Linda swallowed hard, tears building in her eyes. Please don't make me drag that part of my life back into the light. I left Korea for a reason. Sang Ti's voice dipped lower, steady but dangerous. If they came after your daughter, it's already in the light. Linda pressed shaking fingers to her lips. He said we'd be safe. He said they'd never find us. Who? My husband. Shannon's real father. Sang Ti's blood chilled. He stepped closer. Who was he? Linda lifted her eyes, and for the first time, he saw a fear that wasn't born from pain or abuse, but from memory. Jin Ho Yu. Min-jae nearly dropped the file he was holding. Sang-ti stared at her, stunned into silence. She continued, voice trembling. The man they killed. The man whose death made the Busan syndicates break apart. The man your father trusted. A long breath escaped Sang-ti's lungs, slow, disbelieving. Jin Ho-yu, he repeated quietly. He was a right-hand strategist to my father. Linda nodded. And I was his wife. Sang-ti looked over at Shannon. The little girl curled up under his coat, breathing softly. Meaning? He murmured. Linda's eyes met his, heavy and resigned. Meaning Shannon is the last living blood connection to Jin Ho-yu. Her voice cracked. And the rogue faction believes she is owed to them. As payment. As leverage. As punishment. The warehouse fell silent. Even the men who had been pretending not to listen went still. Sang-ti exhaled sharply through his nose. Your stepfather wasn't selling her for money. Linda shook her head, tears streaming. No, they paid him to deliver her, to bring her to a drop point. And he didn't care what happened as long as he got cash. Sang-ti closed his eyes, jaw tightening. This wasn't just a child in danger. This was a Mafia legacy, a chain reaction, a war alarm. He opened his eyes again, voice icy. Why didn't you come to us? To me? To my father's people? Because your father is dead, Linda whispered. And the faction that killed Jin Ho tried to kill your father too. That's why the syndicate fractured. That's why I ran. I thought, maybe if I disappeared, they would stop looking. She shook her head, sobbing softly. I didn't know they had found us. I didn't know Dennis had made deals behind my back. Sang-ti inhaled deeply, struggling to maintain control. Linda, this is bigger than you think. I know. She wiped her tears with trembling hands. But she's my daughter. She's all I have. I just want her safe. Please. I'll do anything. Sang-ti stepped back, studying her. She was terrified, but she wasn't lying. That much he could see. He had seen liars, manipulators, and criminals his whole life. Linda wasn't one of them. But she was tangled in something that could ignite a war. A small movement caught his attention, Shannon turning over on the couch. She blinked awake, rubbing her eyes. When she saw Sang-ti, she sat up and smiled sleepily. You came back, she whispered. Of course, he said softly. She held her arms out, and without hesitation, he lifted her. The child wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her cheek on his shoulder. Linda watched, torn between gratitude and something like heartbreak. Am I going home now? Shannon asked quietly. Sang-ti hesitated. Linda held her breath. Before Sang-ti could answer, the warehouse doors burst open. One of the geometry scouts rushed in, panting. Boss, we found something. Something big. Sang-ti's eyes narrowed. Say it. We tracked the stepfather's phone and the attacker's GPS pings. The scout swallowed. We found a safe house. 40 miles outside the city. Linda grabbed her chest. Are they still there? Are they going to come again? The scout shook his head. Boss, it's not just a hideout. He hesitated. It's a holding site. Sang-ti froze. Define holding. The scout's voice cracked. A trafficking holding site. Multiple victims. Teen girls. We don't know how many. Linda sobbed. Shannon covered her ears, trembling. Sang-ti's heartbeat slowed into something lethal. How many guards? Just one, boss. Probably because they thought no one knew. He set Shannon down gently beside her mother. Stay behind my men. Do not leave this warehouse. Linda grabbed his sleeve. Please, bring whoever you find back alive. Those girls deserve to go home. Sang-ti nodded once. Then he walked toward the door. His men followed like a storm. Min-jae caught up to him. Boss, why are you so quiet? Sang-ti's eyes were cold steel. Because I'm making sure every man responsible for touching a child tonight dies screaming. Min-jae swallowed. And the girl? Shannon. Sang-ti didn't slow. She is under my protection now. If they want her, they go through me. He stepped into the SUV. And no one survives going through me. The drive to the farmhouse cut through thick forest and empty stretches of land. The kind of place no one would hear a scream, even if it split the sky. The convoy of black SUVs moved like shadows under the moonlight. Inside the lead vehicle, Sang-ti sat silent, eyes forward, jaw locked. Min-jae kept glancing at him from the passenger seat, but didn't say a word. Everyone knew this version of Sang-ti. The version who didn't blink, didn't breathe too deeply, didn't speak. The version who killed for children without hesitation. They turned off the main road and onto a dirt path that barely qualified as a road. The farmhouse appeared like a crooked silhouette against the dark. Only one small window glowed. "Boss," Min Jae whispered. "Heat signatures confirm one guard inside." Sang-Ti didn't respond. He opened the door and stepped out quietly. Gravel didn't dare crunch under his feet. The geometry men spread behind him, forming a silent wall of black. "A wolf pack." Sang-Ti motioned with 2 fingers. 3 men flanked left. 2 flanked right. Min Jae moved to the back door. Sang-Ti approached the front door alone. He didn't knock. He kicked it once, just once, and the old would split like paper. The guard inside barely had time to register shock before Sang-Ti stepped forward, grabbed him by the throat, and pinned him against the wall. The man gasped, eyes bulging. "Where are the girls?" Sang-Ti murmured. The guard choked out. "Basement, basement, please." Sang-Ti didn't waste another second. He dropped the man unconscious and moved toward the narrow stairs leading down. The smell hit first. Sweat, dampness, fear. The concrete basement opened into a dim room lit by a single flickering bulb. And there they were. Girls, 6 of them, huddled together, chained by their ankles. Some cried when they saw the men in black. Some froze. Some whispered prayers because they didn't know who to trust. Sang-Ti stepped into the light. They all went silent. One girl near the corner lifted her head slowly. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, her face pale from hunger. But her eyes carried the same shape as Shannon's. Min Jae whispered, "Boss, that's Emma." Sang-Ti moved toward her slowly, careful not to frighten the others. She stared at him, confused, scared. "Emma," he said softly, "Shannon sent me." Her lips trembled. "Shannon, is she alive?" "Yes," Sang-Ti answered gently. "And she's safe. Now we're taking you home." A sob broke from her chest, and she collapsed into him. Sang-Ti, the dragon of Yangon, the man whose name made grown criminals tremble, held her like a fragile piece of glass. He lifted her into his arms. "Min Jae, unchain all of them. Wrap them in blankets. No rough movements. No loud voices." His men moved with a different kind of precision now, gentle, careful, almost reverent. They carried the girls out one by one, placing them in the SUVs with water, food, and blankets. As Sang-Ti reached the stairs with Emma clinging to him, she whispered, "They were going to move us tomorrow. New buyers, new places, we would have been gone by sunrise." Sang-Ti's grip tightened around her. "Not tonight. Not ever again." When they reached the main floor, Min Jae joined him. "Boss," he said softly. The guard woke up. "Says he was paid by Dennis Riley directly. No middlemen." Sang-Ti's eyes darkened. "And Vance?" Min Jae hesitated. "Funding. He financed the property." He knew. Sang-Ti exhaled slowly, dangerously. "Then we burn his world." They left the farmhouse behind, the convoy heading straight back to the city under the cloak of night. As they drove, Emma leaned against Sang-Ti's shoulder, finally sleeping after months of terror. Each breath she took felt like a quiet victory. At the warehouse, Linda screamed when she saw her niece and ran to her. Hugging her so tightly, Emma whimpered. Shannon rushed forward, small and frantic. "Emma, Emma." Emma dropped to her knees and hugged her. The cousins cried together, clutching each other like their lives depended on it. Linda held both of them close, sobbing into their hair. Sang-Ti stood a few steps away, watching the reunion with a tight chest. He had seen death, blood, betrayal, and pain. But this raw relief, did something to him he couldn't explain. Shannon wiped her eyes and ran to him. She wrapped her arms around his leg. "Thank you, Uncle Sang." He froze. The warehouse went silent. Slowly, he put a hand on her head. "You're safe now." She looked up at him, her cheeks damp. "Are you going to stay with us?" "So nobody can take me again." Linda looked up sharply, as if bracing herself for the rejection. Sang-Ti knelt, so he was eye level with Shannon. "Nobody," he said softly. "Not while I'm breathing." She threw her arms around his neck, and he held her gently. Linda stepped closer, voice trembling. Why are you doing all this for us?" He looked at Shannon first, then at Emma, then at Linda. "Because children don't choose the monsters chasing them. But monsters choose the wrong damn day when they chase them into my territory." Linda covered her mouth, tears falling again. This time, not from fear. from relief, from safety, for the first time in years. The days that followed were a hurricane. Federal agents swarmed the farmhouse site. Evidence filled trucks, photos, ledgers, chains, forged passports. Victor Vance was arrested again, this time with no chance of bail. Dennis Riley was dragged out of a motel, screaming about the men in black who haunted him every night. The investigation spread like fire, exposing a trafficking web that reached every level of Victor's empire. And through it all, Shannon and Emma slowly came back to life. They slept, they ate, they laughed, they painted, they healed. Sang-Ti visited every day. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought toys. Sometimes he just sat on the floor while the girls braided his hair badly, giggling as they added tiny, colorful beads. One evening, Shannon climbed into his lap and touched the dragon tattoo on his arm. "Does this mean you're a protector?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Something like that." She nodded with absolute certainty. "Then you're my dragon." Sang-Ti looked at her for a long moment. For the first time in years, his chest felt warm instead of heavy. "You're under my wings now," he whispered. "Always." Weeks later, after sentencing, after justice, after the world finally stopped spinning, Linda found a sleek black envelope on her doorstep. The dragon seal pressed into the wax shimmered under the light. Inside was a trust fund for Shannon's future, education, housing, therapy, medical needs, everything she would ever require until adulthood. And a quiet note. The dragon protects what the world failed to protect. Live freely. St. Shannon grew into a brilliant young woman, then a pediatrician with a gentle voice and fierce determination. She framed the letter above her desk, right beside her medical degree. And sometimes, when the wind brushed the window at night, she whispered with a smile, "Thank you, Uncle Sang." Endless Love Stories invites viewers to subscribe for more Afro-Korean mafia tales filled with courage, destiny, and love that rises from the